Once upon a time, in a small village nestled in the heart of a lush forest, lived two young orphans, Ngozi and Eze. Their lives had been forever changed by the tragic loss of their parents. Their mother had passed away shortly after giving birth to Eze, and their father had succumbed to grief just 2 days later. Before their untimely demise, Ngozi and Eze's parents had sensed that their children were special, imbued with unique gifts that would one day be revealed. But fate had other plans, and the young siblings were left to navigate the world without the guidance of their loving parents. Fortunately, Ngozi and Eze were taken in by their aunt and uncle, who welcomed them into their home with open arms. For 20 years, the siblings lived with their relatives, forming memories and sharing experiences that would shape their lives. As they approached their 21st birthday, Ngozi and Eze began to feel an inexplicable restlessness, a sense that it was time to spread their wings and forge their own paths. And so, on their shared birthday, they made the bittersweet decision to leave their aunt and uncle's home. Ngozi, being the older sibling, departed first, leaving Eze to follow in her footsteps. As they went their separate ways, they couldn't help but wonder what the future held for them. Little did they know, their lives were about to take a dramatic turn, one that would lead them down a journey of self-discovery, growth, and ultimately, the uncovering of their hidden gifts. It was a typical night for Ngozi and Eze, living alone in their new home. They had spent the day unpacking and settling into their new routine. As they retired to their respective bedrooms, exhausted from the day's events, they were suddenly jolted awake by the sound of shattering glass and muffled voices coming from downstairs. At first, they thought it might be a stray animal or a prankster. But as the noises grew louder and more intense, they realized that something was amiss. Without hesitation, they threw off their covers and crept downstairs, their hearts pounding in unison. As they reached the bottom of the stairs, they were met with a scene that made their blood run cold. A group of shadowy figures, their faces obscured by masks, were rummaging through the house, snatching valuables and smashing anything that stood in their way. Ngozi and Eze felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through their veins as they watched the thieves desecrate their home. Without thinking, they charged forward, determined to defend their property. But as they clashed with the thieves, something strange and unexpected happened. As they raised their hands to fight, a brilliant blue sparkling light erupted from their fingertips, illuminating the darkened room. The light was so intense that it sent the thieves stumbling backward, covering their eyes in pain. Ngozi and Eze were just as shocked as the thieves. They stumbled backward, their eyes wide with wonder, as they stared at their hands in awe. What was happening to them? Just then, a gentle voice whispered in their ears. "You are special children, chosen for a greater purpose. Your gifts are not to be used for harm or destruction, but for protection and justice." As time passed, Eze found himself increasingly consumed by the power that coursed through his veins. He began to feel invincible, as if nothing could stop him. But with this newfound sense of power came a darkness, a malevolent force that threatened to overwhelm him. Ngozi noticed the change in her brother and tried to reach out to him. "Eze, what's going on with you?" she asked, concern etched on her face. "You're not yourself anymore." But Eze just laughed, his eyes gleaming with an otherworldly intensity. "I'm better than myself," he sneered. "I'm powerful." One fateful morning, Eze's darkness-fueled ambitions reached a boiling point. He concocted a diabolical plan to destroy the city's iconic stadium, a symbol of joy and community for thousands. Ngozi, oblivious to her brother's sinister intentions, went about her day as usual. But as night began to fall, she noticed Eze sneaking out of the house. Her instincts told her something was off, and she decided to follow him. As she trailed Eze through the shadows, her heart racing with anticipation, she realized that he was heading towards the stadium. A sense of foreboding settled in the pit of her stomach. When Eze reached the center of the stadium, he raised his hands, and a bolt of dark energy shot towards the structure. But just as the energy was about to make contact, Ngozi shouted, "Eze, no!" Eze spun around, his eyes blazing with fury. For a moment, he seemed to regard Ngozi as an enemy. His expression twisted in a snarl. "Why are you here?" he growled, his voice low and menacing. "You just ruined my plans." Ngozi stood her ground, despite the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. "Eze, snap out of it," she pleaded. "Remember what the spirit told us. Our powers are a sacred trust. We can't use them for destruction." But Eze just laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. "You're so weak, Ngozi," he sneered. "You don't understand the true extent of our powers." With that, he turned and disappeared into the night, leaving Ngozi shaken and worried. She knew that she had to find a way to reach her brother, to bring him back from the brink of darkness. As she made her way back home, Ngozi couldn't shake off the feeling that Eze's descent into darkness was only just beginning, and she feared that she might be the only one who could save him. 3 days had passed since Eze's first attempt to destroy the stadium. Ngozi had been on high alert, watching her brother's every move, waiting for any sign that he might be slipping back into his dark tendencies. And then, it happened. Eze began to act strangely, his eyes taking on a far-off look, his movements becoming increasingly agitated. Ngozi knew the signs all too well. Her brother was planning something. She decided to follow him, tracking him to the stadium once again. As she watched from the shadows, Eze raised his hands, and a bolt of dark energy shot towards the structure. But Ngozi was ready. She stepped forward, her voice ringing out across the stadium. "Eze, stop. Remember what the spirit told us." Eze's eyes flashed with anger, but Ngozi stood her ground. "Our powers are a sacred trust," she reminded him. "We can't use them for destruction." For a moment, Eze seemed to waver. His eyes dropped, and his shoulders slumped in defeat. And then, in a burst of emotion, he turned to Ngozi, his face etched with remorse. "I'm so sorry, Ngozi," he said, his voice cracking with guilt. "I don't know what's wrong with me. I feel like I'm losing control." Ngozi's expression softened, and she reached out to her brother. "It's okay, Eze," she said. "We'll get through this together. Just remember, our powers are a gift, not a curse." Eze nodded, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. He knew he had been given a second chance, and he was determined to make the most of it. As they walked back home, Ngozi turned to Eze with a serious expression. "You need to be more careful, Eze," she said. "Our powers are not something to be taken lightly." Eze nodded, feeling a sense of gratitude towards his sister. He knew he couldn't have made it without her, and he vowed to always be more mindful of his actions. But little did they know, their struggles were only just beginning. A new challenge was looming on the horizon, one that would test their powers, their bond, and their very resolve. Ngozi and Eze thought they had finally found a sense of peace and normalcy after Eze's second attempt to destroy the stadium. They had been working together, using their powers to help those in need, and their bond had grown stronger as a result. But as they were enjoying a quiet evening at home, a strange, unsettling energy began to permeate the air. It was as if a dark presence was watching them, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. At first, Ngozi and Eze dismissed it as mere paranoia. But as the energy grew thicker, they knew they had to take action. They joined hands, focusing their powers to try and sense what was happening. That's when they saw it, a shadowy entity, tall and imposing, with eyes that glowed like embers. It was standing just beyond the edge of their property, watching them with an unblinking gaze. Ngozi and Eze exchanged a nervous glance. They had never seen anything like this before. The entity seemed to be absorbing the light around it, growing stronger with each passing moment. Without hesitation, Ngozi and Eze raised their hands. unleashing a blast of energy to try and repel the entity. But to their surprise, it didn't budge. Instead, it began to laugh, a low, menacing sound that sent shivers down their spines. "You think you can defeat me?" The entity sneered, its voice like a cold wind. "I have been awakened by your powers, and now I will show you true strength." With that, the entity began to transform, its body contorting and twisting until it became a massive, dark creature with razor-sharp claws and teeth. Ngozi and Eze knew they were in for the fight of their lives. They steeled themselves, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. But they couldn't shake off the feeling that they were in over their heads. The battle between Ngozi, Eze, and the shadow entity had begun. And only time would tell who would emerge victorious. Ngozi and Eze stood back to back, their eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of the entity's next move. They could feel its presence all around them, a cold, malevolent energy that seemed to seep into their very bones. "We need to work together," Ngozi whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of their own ragged breathing. "I know," Eze replied, his eyes locked on the entity. "But how?" Ngozi hesitated, thinking. And then, in a flash of inspiration, she knew. "We need to combine our powers," she said. "Create a blast of energy that will banish the entity back to wherever it came from." Eze nodded, a fierce determination burning in his eyes. "Let's do it." Together, they raised their hands, focusing all their energy on the entity. The air around them began to crackle with electricity, and a blindingly bright light erupted from their fingertips. The entity let out a deafening roar as the light enveloped it. But Ngozi and Eze stood firm, pouring all their energy into the blast. Slowly but surely, the entity began to dissipate, its dark form breaking apart into nothingness. As the last of the entity vanished, Ngozi and Eze collapsed to the ground, exhausted but triumphant. They had saved their home, and themselves. The spirit reappeared, its eyes shining with pride. "Well done, Ngozi and Eze," it said. "You have proven yourselves worthy of your powers. Use them wisely, and always remember the lessons you have learned." And with that, the spirit vanished, leaving Ngozi and Eze to ponder the incredible journey they had been on. They knew that their lives would never be the same, that they had been forever changed by the experiences they had shared. But they also knew that they were ready for whatever lay ahead, as long as they stood together. As the days turned into weeks, Ngozi and Eze became an unstoppable force for good. They used their powers to help those in need, solving cases that had gone cold and bringing hope to those who had lost it. Their aunt and uncle, who had grown worried about their whereabouts, were overjoyed to discover the truth. They couldn't believe the incredible things their niece and nephew were doing. "You two are heroes," their aunt exclaimed, beaming with pride. As news of their exploits spread, people began to take notice. The city's residents, who had once lived in fear of crime and corruption, now felt a sense of safety and gratitude. One by one, people came forward to thank Ngozi and Eze for their hard work. A mother thanked them for finding her missing child. A businessman thanked them for foiling a robbery attempt. A police officer thanked them for helping solve a string of baffling murders. The city's mayor, impressed by their heroism, invited them to a special ceremony. There, in front of a packed audience, he awarded them the key to the city. Ngozi and Eze blushed as they accepted the honor, their hearts swelling with pride. They knew that they had found their true purpose in life, to use their powers for the greater good. As they walked off the stage, hand in hand, they knew that they would always stand together, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. And so, the story of Ngozi and Eze came full circle. From orphan siblings to heroes of the city, they had found their true calling. Their powers, once a curse, had become a blessing, a reminder of the incredible things they could achieve together.